Welcome everybody. My name is Ayesha Khan. I'm your moderator for this presentation. We're talking about design in a pandemic because we find ourselves in a very different situation than we were last year during Seatrade in Miami. And we're all adjusting ourselves, and that's what we're here to talk about. I would love to introduce the panelists, and I'm going to introduce them all very selfishly as how I am related to them or how they are related to me. It's a big industry and it's very incestuous. Francesca Bucci, starting with her, she's the president of Bucci Studio International, and she is my mentor and really taught me everything I know about this industry and really got me started. So we have her. Greg Walton is someone I met around the same time as when I started working for Francesca on the Celebrity Solstice class of ships. And he at the time was working at RTKL, and then he boldly went out on his own and founded Studio DADO. So welcome, Greg. And then I took a hiatus from designing cruise ships to work for Condé Nast and Hearst and started writing about cruise ships and hospitality. But then, you know, I really missed being a designer, so I came back to work at Jeffrey Beers International, which is where I work now. And as many of you know and have read a lot of what I've written, I still do contribute to various Condé Nast publications. And it is with this job that I have now at Jeffrey Beers that I was lucky enough to meet Anna-Mari Gullikstad, who is at YSA. She is the CEO and a partner and interior architect. So welcome, Anna-Mari. And Fredrik Johansson, last but not least, from Tillberg Design of Sweden, is a celebrity in his own right. Of course, everybody knows Fredrik. And I also met him at my time here now at Jeffrey Beers International, and we're working on an amazing project together now. So now that everybody's introduced, I think it would be great for us to all tell our stories about how the pandemic, or where we sort of were when the pandemic struck, and how it's changed our businesses and the way we are looking at diversifying, or which one of our projects have gone on hold and which ones ironically have not gone on hold. I can start that off. At Jeffrey Beers International, as many of you know, we are a hospitality design firm, and our core competency was always hospitality, restaurants, and cruise ships were a part of our business that I was building before the pandemic struck and continue to build. And so when the pandemic struck on that Monday when New York City went in lockdown, I was feeling a little funny, really tired, and it turns out I actually had COVID. So aside from that and being super foggy and super tired and exhausted, we heard from all of our clients, and one of our projects surprisingly did not go on hold. So it was like, we were kind of breathing a sigh of relief, because I was like, okay, this project's gonna go on hold. We have a little bit of time to regroup. And they're like, nope, we need drawings, we need presentations. So that was funny, and quite an adjustment. And then we had another project that was really entering the construction administration phase. It was going to be a lot of trips to Turku, talking to a lot of talking to the client, dealing with submittals and things like that. And that was brought to a screeching halt by the client, but the shipyard was still going full throttle. So it was really interesting. It's like, your client's not really paying you, but you need to make sure that your design is executed in the way that you want it to be. So that was an interesting experience of like, how much is too much, because when do you want to start billing for those hours, and when do you want to make sure that they don't screw up your design. So with that personal experience, I would love to throw it over to Greg Walton. So let us know what your experience was.
Well, my experience, actually, it's interesting because most of us associate early to mid-March as the beginning of seeing the effect of the coronavirus and what it did to the cruise ship industry. But I happen to have been on the West Coast in the middle of February at Princess's offices in Santa Clarita, and then the next day at Holland America Group in Seattle. And going on at that time was when Emerald and Grand Princess were just beginning to have this the COVID issue starting to rear its head. And it was really before it had actually gotten out into, major news streams and everything. So I sort of got this glimpse. It was interesting to be sitting in the offices of Holland America Group and Princess when this was starting. Of course, you can imagine the sense of what was going on and what was happening. So for us, and then I immediately came back from there, and actually I departed to go to Brazil, and then came back from Brazil, and our office went to working from home, and all the refurbishment projects that we had underway immediately stopped. We did have 3 new build projects, which are still going on today, and we are still working on. One is going to be delivered out of Turku. It has been delayed from October this year to February of next year for its delivery. And fortunately for us, we have 2 new builds that are going out of Finken Dairy Yards, one in Marghera and one in Geneva. And we've been lucky that our clients want us to see those projects through, and they're still paying us. So that was a blessing. But we, like any other business, we sort of took a step back and looked at what cash flow situation, et cetera, those kind of things were. So we put our staff on a 4-day work week to basically hold on to cash, because nobody had a crystal ball in March, and we don't have a crystal ball today to know when is this going to end and when is the world going to get back to the new normal or a variation of the old normal. So for us, we've been lucky that we've maintained our current staff, and we've been able to work on projects. Since this, we've had another new build project start up, which is great. And we have diversified from just cruise ships into river boats, and we're working with a company based here in America on river boats.
That's really interesting. All right, Francesca.
Well, our story is a lot shorter than Greg because we basically started seeing the repercussion of COVID, I would say probably in the month of February, March. We were working for lots of projects and new builds and renovations for Royal. And we were in the middle, and to some category we still are, of construction documents and deliverables and things like this. So kind of things started shutting down a little bit, little by little. Some more gray hair started like accumulating on top, and I would just say that it hasn't been like a screeching halt like you described before, but more of a slow decline of work. One positive silver lining for our firm is that since the get-go, when we started our firm in 2001, we created a diversification for our firm. So we started at the same time that we were working on cruise ships, we started working on land-based projects with mainly developers and multi-housing hotels and things like this. So this is still going on, fortunately, to some extent, and we're very grateful for that. Same time as New York was a really bad place to be. Now, at one point, now it's a little bit better, and construction has resumed. This is one good thing that you like to live in the city. It's a lot of construction, so we are helping ourselves with this type of diversification and funneling business through that. So the important thing for us is that we want to be here when the clients are coming back. So we are kind of trying to help ourselves as much as possible, basically.
Excellent. Anna-Mari, you are over in Oslo, Norway. Tell us how things are going for you.
Yes. So being 30 years in this industry, I must admit that a few weeks in March and April was maybe the most dramatic that we have ever experienced. I mean, we have been through September 11th and the financial crisis and everything, but this was really, I think this is the most dramatic we have ever experienced, and it was a few letters and a few phone calls during those weeks that gave us that we started to rethink what to do next, because a few refurbishment projects, they were cancelled or at least stopped for the moment. And also we got messages from some of our clients that they wanted to either slow down or take a break and stop and see what happened. So it looked a little scary there for a few weeks. Luckily, we do have one big project that carries quite a lot of our staff, so it was not so we had to furlough a lot of people, but we stepped down a little bit with everyone, so not full time with everyone. Yeah, but it has been better than it looked. So slowly, some of the clients came back. And as Greg said, that luckily they are paying us, and even though things are slower than originally scheduled, then we are okay. But I think it's an eye-opener that we need maybe to have more differentiations of what we are doing, because as you all know that our office is like 80% with cruise ships, and of course I think it's good to have more. We should also focus a little bit more on land-based, because here in Norway the land-based situation is good. So it's nothing. So for the architect offices working here, it's not the same as we have experienced being international. So but I think we're looking forward, and we think this is also is maybe a kickstart of rethinking a little bit, and maybe even give a good chance of thinking slightly change in the cruise industry. Maybe they need to focus differently, and I think that will be at the end. I'm sure this will be a good kickstart for something new, I think. So
yeah, that's really interesting.
As Francesca says, we definitely will be here, and we will be going on and be ready whenever the cruise lines are ready to do new stuff, for sure.
Of course, and that's really interesting that you brought up reinventing yourselves and really thinking outside of the box. And Fredrik, I'd love to throw it to you, because I know that you have some ways in which you guys have been doing that as well.
Well, yes, in a way, by the end of February, I think we all realized how it all came to. Well, the traveling came to a halt. Last time I was traveling was between Bergen and Scotland in late February, and then I haven't traveled since. And I've been traveling twice a month for the last 25 years. So it's some severe withdrawal symptoms in the beginning, but they're all gone now. We had when it all happened and the situation became serious, we had I think 25 different projects running in parallel, and we're lucky enough to work with most of the big corporations, so we have a pretty good spread. And they, as you know, they're very long term, and they're phasing out slowly. Most of them have continued as usual. What we have seen is that some owners have decided to build sister ships that are identical twins to the ones going on right now. So later on there may be less work to do. But interestingly enough, we also have almost a dozen startup projects for new brands who want to enter the industry right now. And they seem to take the opportunity now when things are slowing down amongst the big players. And now so they're taking the inner curve and taking the opportunity to get good prices. There's the shipyards are suddenly a bit more keen than before. There are good people available from the bigger brands who've had some layoffs. So we're actually very busy right now with startup projects as a complement, and then we're part of a little private yacht consortium in the UK so we're also doing some private yacht projects, and that's not slowing down at all. Suddenly we have a lot of private yacht projects on the drawing table again who are also taking the opportunity, because some of them are as big as the smaller cruise ships, and they're going to the big shipyards and getting some good prices right now. So it's all pretty interesting how it works out. But we have, just like Greg said, we've decided to keep the vast majority of our good people, because it's so sad and also very costly to lose people and then get people back when things are picking up. So we'll spend this period of improving our company and also helping our clients to improve themselves during this period, because I think there's a lot we can do to use this opportunity or this challenge we have right now to actually improve things in the business. It's not all bad. There are I think some good things coming out of it in the long run too.
Yeah, I think generally COVID has been, this pandemic and the slowing down of it has allowed us to be very introspective, and I think that's really great for the industry as a whole, for us to all be able to see and be self-critical and see how we can improve and do things a little bit better. That brings me to my next question, and I think, Fredrik, I'd like to go stay with you on the first person to answer this question. A lot of people were keen to know, even the questions that we've been receiving now while we've had this webinar going, is about how our clients have asked us to, or how we have taken initiative to redesign or rethink certain things on a ship in response to hygiene and things like that. So, Fredrik, I'd love to start with you on that one.
Well, so far it's been surprisingly little, I must say. Most of the ship owners have stopped sailing instead of redesigning the ships. Yeah. So I guess long term, most owners, well, mid-term maybe, most of the owners will try to manage all these things in-house. They're rearranging furniture, they're reprogramming the daily life on board, and they're kind of coping with the situation in that manner. So with existing ships, I guess there isn't going to be that much drastic changes to them. There's a limit to what you can do, economy-wise and so forth. They will probably get rid of some buffet restaurants on some ships and have less people on board, but nothing's very major. So I think that's pretty interesting. That's some cruise ship owners are also starting up cruising again with some shorter cruises and probably with less people on board. And I think, but I do think that most of the ships will be laid up until the vaccine is available on a larger scale, and that's the remedy of the situation. It's not complete redesign of the ships. But I think for the and also even for the ongoing new builds, there isn't not many major modifications, surprisingly enough. And I think my own conclusion is that the existing ships and the ongoing new builds, they will not change drastically, but the next generation of ships may. So they will probably be designed to be better prepared for new outbreaks or other kind of emergencies, and probably also because we may need to have a few less people on board, a few more crew on board for cleaning, and less self-service and more, what's it called, active serving, and therefore the ships are probably going to be a bit less profitable, and we have to compensate for that, I think, in the future by making the ships more cost-effective, maintenance friendly, better use of space, and so forth. I think that's the long-term effect on the design side.
And was there something that you wanted to share, Fredrik?
I had a little example of how we, for a small ship client, this is a ship of about 400 guests on board, or 500, where this is originated. It's a very traditional buffet restaurant. So we looked at how we could redesign this layout to become more, let's say, both more COVID friendly, get rid of the buffet and all the cross flows and the people bouncing into each other here. So they decided to reduce the total capacity of the restaurant from about 320 to 260 guests, and so instead we created more of a contemporary looking food court where you see the color coded counters on the right hand side instead. So you they look different, and they serve different types of food, each of them. So the red one, I'm a dessert counter, and the yellow one is I'm a fish counter or whatever. So already when you walk in, you see where the counters are, and you walk straight up to the right counter. And then we took the opportunity to redesign the layouts to be a bit more contemporary, with a mix of high-low seats and what have you, and also less people, 260 guests, and more clear flows through the restaurant, so you can avoid cross flows and people bouncing into each other more than necessary. so better use of space basically. So it's similar to what we did for in Australia a few years ago, where we took the Holland America Rhine Dam, the buffets there, which look like this, long lines of buffets where people are queuing up and sneezing on each other's food. And instead you have food court looking outlets like this. So each little counter section is the same. It's the same restaurant, just completely different look to it, and also each counter section has a different look. So so it signals that I'm a coffee counter, I'm a dessert counter, I'm a whatever. And the good thing about this is not just the look and feel of it, but it actually eliminated most of the queuing as a by effect of that, and which is pretty perfect from a Corona point of view.
Yep.
But it also cut the food waste in half just by having people going to the right place and having just a helping or a portion served to them, as opposed to scooping up big lumps of food on your plate. And then guest satisfaction went through the roof as a third by effect, which was so a triple win there. Yeah, just a quick example of what I think will happen with a lot of the buffet restaurants on the ships, that they will be converted into a different kind of semi-self-service concept or similar.
Yep, absolutely. Greg.
Yes. Same question. It's interesting. I will, first of all, I totally agree with what Fredrik said. I've been saying this for a while as well, that I really personally don't feel we're going to see ships on the water in any type of major way until there's a vaccine. And the reason I say this is that the revenue model for cruise ships, we all know, is to be over 100% occupancy. And so, putting a ship out on the water with 50% or 60% capacity, it's the ship's going to be running at a loss. And so I think, the cruise lines are looking at, that cost versus just holding the ships until there's a vaccine and then going back in. Like Fredrik, we've had very few to almost zero type of request for any kind of design. There was, I would say, at the very beginning of the pandemic back in March, when we all sort of were in stay-at-home orders and working from home, a lot of us begin to try to anticipate what may come, but we sort of found that the cruise lines were not anticipating. They were sort of, I think, waiting to get some kind of direction out of CDC until the cruise lines themselves. As Francesca and I know, we both work for clients that have partnered together with experts and medical professionals, et cetera, former people that ran the CDC, et cetera, to create their healthy sail program and come at the end of this month with recommended guidelines on bringing sailing in a post-COVID world. So I think a lot of us are probably waiting to see what that information is, and then how do we amend designs. I think, we may not see, to Fredrik's point, a lot of changes made on existing fleets or on new builds that are under construction at this point. I do believe that this will not be the last pandemic we see.
Right.
It was 6 years ago, there was Ebola. Now we're with COVID-19, who knows what comes next. So I think even when a vaccine comes, we cannot ignore that there will be another occurrence of something that'll come along, and how do we design to mitigate that before it becomes a problem. So I think those kind of things will come into play, and I think we'll get a lot of that sort of fed out of these programs that the different cruise lines are working with medical professionals and infectious disease professionals on.
Okay. Francesca, I'd love to hear from you on that.
Well, I see it a little bit different than Greg. A little similar, a little different. And I maybe I'm like this super optimistic person always, and I'm always looking at our food gas constantly. And so I'm kind of, there's a dichotomy in here, and on one way, as a business owner of a firm that works a lot with cruise ships, I, of course, want to see the ships going back on the water immediately, as soon as possible. And on the other way, my business sense tells me that there are a lot of factors, you know, that they are going to control that. So go back to my, you know, desire to see the ships on the water. I think that right now, I don't think it's about design solutions for, I mean, as far as we are concerned, I don't think it's about design solutions for the clients to look into, rather really look into the operations, and first and foremost. And we've been hearing about this, the health sale panel, we've been hearing about what NCL and Royal are doing, and I truly hope that given the leadership that is in there, that and I'm confident that they will come up with things that will eventually be the poster child of the solution for in the cruise ship industry, and I'm very optimistic about that. So now design solutions for us to give in this moment, I really don't think they're that important. I think it's important that the clients focus their attention on operation. And if you ask me what ideally I would like to see, well, I would like to see less density. I know that, you know, like Greg says, there is a financial model that that it's in there, but there has to be a way of still being financially feasible and organize things on the ship, and in a sense that people are not so close to each other, and maybe from the design solution point of view, I think like in the future it would be really nice to foresee ships that even these big ships, you know, that they have so much space, but if you look at it, at the end of the day, not a lot of this space is really an outdoor space. Right. So if I have a wish list in there, will be let me rethink the, you know, some of the spaces that are traditionally indoor spaces, the theaters, the dining rooms, or even the exercise rooms. So even some of the retail part, can we turn this? Can we turn these venues into more of an outdoor experience, kind of very similar what we have done for Celebrity Flora, which is another, it's a big yacht, and it's another thing altogether, but it was focused on the outdoor and with reduced capacity. Can we make a model out of that and provide the clients for the future solutions that really do involve more outdoor activities?
That's very interesting. And I know when we were having sort of a pre-discussion amongst ourselves, someone had brought up, and please jump in whoever had brought this up, repurposing some of the spaces, because on a ship so many times you'll see that the theater is empty for most of the day, or there's certain evening venues that are empty during the day. In order to decrease the density in spaces that are so concentrated at certain times of the day, the theater at night, versus the theater being empty during the day, to really shift programming and possibly design to have spaces have a multi-function, so that density is spread out throughout the day on a ship. So that is something exactly. That, and I want to remind everyone who is in attendance at this, all of our audience, who is in attendance, that we actually are going to have part 2 of this discussion, where the operators are going to be on the discussion, and someone from Meyer Werft will also be on, and it'll be interesting because we're making so many, we're like, well, we hope, we think, but we're going to have the operators, we're going to have people from the big 3, and we have Virgin coming in as well, so that'll be really interesting because a lot of the things that we discuss in this discussion will be part of the second discussion. Anna Mari, please.
Yeah, no, I think actually I brought that up last time when we spoke that that we need to focus on utilizing areas differently than what it is today, and there should be a lot of possibilities to rethink some of these empty spaces, that they can have different events, or even like Francesca saying, maybe create more outdoor areas. And but I think also, I mean, like the others have said, we have not either been requested to do any big changes. It is mainly the buffet and how they no self-serve and have food packed in separate packages. So maybe it's a little bit too early to say exactly what's required from the various companies. But I think that the most important to be able to get back and to have people or guests coming back in is, of course, create safety and a feeling of that things are going good, and maybe it's more focusing on air and air quality, and also how to actually manage the flow. For instance, by disembarkation or embarkation, I think it needs to be a lot of connections between the what you call it, the onshore and the offshore. So when you enter into the to check in, and how is that going to happen? So I think there needs to be maybe a slightly different focus on all of that. And I think people will, even though you do get the vaccine, I mean, people forget really easily also. But on the other hand, I think this has lasted and will probably last for so long. So I think people will be conscious about being in big groups for a long time. So maybe it needs to be more focused on how they can utilize the restaurants, create more individual spaces. Maybe you are more in a group of people, that you have cabins not too far in the same location, and you use the dining in the same time. A little bit like what they already do with some of these more VIP areas, but maybe that will stretch more out to all the guests, that you are in certain somehow groups or individual. Yeah. And I also think that we said earlier before this happened, that people in general is maybe more and more focusing on individual experiences. So if they can create that, of course, in the same ship, but somehow, if you are interested in theater, you have your little theater group. I don't know, food, dining experiences, and that will be even more developed than what it is today. I don't know, but I think maybe that could be a trend, and that is already kind of starting, and this will just enforce this experience that we have now. So yeah, but I think seriously, there is some great opportunities to actually think these big ships a little bit differently than what they have been, and this mass tourism. Maybe they need to kind of make that a little bit more. Not, I don't know how to say that, but less mass tourism and more individuality.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Just kind of wanted to add a little thing just quickly, that to some extent something like that has already happened in the industry in the past, when we started transforming these big massive dining rooms into, you know, smaller specialty restaurants and all different, like dining, nighttime dining and things like this. So there has been, not because of COVID, but because the audience has changed, and the attention to the personalized attention has becoming more important. This has already happened in the industry. I think that it really needs to, this crisis right now, I think, is focusing more the attention on more and more on the guest and their personalized experience. And I think we have an opportunity of doing that, even for this specific reason.
Yeah, that's what I think also. It's already started, but this gives it an extra push, I think.
I think that's exactly what I was going to say. COVID has galvanized certain thoughts that we had in the backs of our minds, but we're just too damn busy working and traveling to the operators, the shipyards. We were just all too busy trying to keep up with the with the crazy rigor of the industry. And I think COVID has really galvanized the introspection, given us some time to pause, and really, it's a good thing, you know. So from chaos comes so much clarity, I think. So that brings me to my final thought before we open it to questions. Why do we think collectively and individually that the cruise industry will be okay? Because so many people are saying that, you know, Carnival is facing insolvency, there's such a financial crisis on its way, travel in general is questionable now. Why do each of us think that the cruise industry will be just fine? And we haven't heard from Fredrik in a while, so I'm going to turn it to him first.
Okay. I think there are simply two huge assets out there that, you know, it will not be allowed to fail. You know, yeah, well, if one of the big players go bankrupt, then there'll be a new owner picking up the pieces and you know, developing it. Some brands will have new owners, some will emerge, and some will, you know, there'll be rebranding, and there'll be all sorts of things happening. I think it will just not be allowed to fail, because the values are so huge, the investments are so huge, and the opportunities also are so huge. But again, I do think we will see a bigger focus on improving the business. So, you know, what you say, never waste a good crisis. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to actually sharpen the pencil. And there's a lot of cruise lines and operators who have been, you know, we have been doing this copy paste, building series of ships, and we haven't really improved anything drastically over the last 10 or 15 years. So it's just getting bigger, but not much better often. So there's a lot of things we can do. I think both on the design side, we can design the ships to be more cost effective and space effective and what have you, and the whole design process can also be made a lot more effective. You know, the way we develop the ships and the whole design and development process with the yards and the owners, and that whole decision process can be made more effective. There's a lot of things we can do better, and I think that's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of focus. So if the industry suffers from this, and the margins will probably shrink a little bit in the future, and then once they start making money, they will have to pay back all the debts that they accumulated now, then economy is going to be even more important, and designing economic ships is going to be even more important in the future. Yeah. That's where I think our opportunities as designers also.
Absolutely. Let's change the order up a little bit. Anna-Mari.
Yeah, I think you know, people always want vacation, and bread and circus is important, and also not so good days. So I think the cruise industry will survive definitely, but of course maybe then with some changes. And I think also the loyalty, the cruise passengers that are traveling today, they are very loyal to this type of a vacation, and they will definitely demand coming back somehow, but as long as the cruise industry can provide them with the safety. And of course, this industry is so huge. I mean, it's so many different other kind of under deliveries, or I mean, it's so connected with big yards and subcontractors and so much more than just that cruise ship. So there's a lot of forces that, of course, wants this to continue running. I mean, the state of Italy is, of course, interested in having cruise ships being built, and I think that's the same with other countries as well. So, yeah. So they'll definitely find a way out of it. It's maybe just more the time, how long time it will take. So, too many strong forces to let this just leave, definitely. So, yeah. I think, yeah. Absolutely.
Greg, what are your thoughts?
Two words come to mind for me, and it would be resiliency and consolidation. I sort of will use on the consolidation discussion, a very wise individual told me when this whole pandemic emerged, to expect consolidation in the industry, and not from the predictable way you may have thought about in your head. And so I don't think we've seen that phase of responding to the pandemic in this industry sort of happen yet. But I'll sort of use like the airlines for an example. You know, we've seen in the airline industry, and it was really not because of any kind of pandemic, but just basic operational cost, etc. With airlines, we've seen, at least in the United States, airlines consolidate over the past 5 to 10 years. You know, we used to have all these different companies of airlines, and now we're basically United and American and Southwest, and that's about it. So I would say that's one thing.
Delta.
And Delta. And so I would say that's one thing I think that to sort of see what happens in the industry on that, which will actually make the industry, if I use the airlines as an example, come back much stronger, you know, if things like that happen. And the other thing is the word resiliency. And I really use the whole 9/11 and the recession of 2009, 2008, 2009 as examples. And the cruise industry then, you know, they realized they had an asset that they could relocate anywhere in the world. And so they, after 9/11, they started putting ships within a 2-3 hour drive of their potential guests because no one wanted to get on a plane, and they rebounded very quickly. So I have all the faith in the cruise industry that it will be here long after all of us quit designing, and it will come back as a much stronger industry than it was before this pandemic. So, you know, there's great leadership in the cruise industry, and I trust that they will persevere and come out of this on top.
I read somewhere that the cruise industry comebacks more than Britney Spears. So with all this, they have absolutely a huge resiliency. So they're, yeah.
Francesca.
Yes, I think what gives me more optimism in general is that the cruise industry is really led by very smart and knowledgeable people. Knowledgeable with a lot of passion for the industry. This is not something that I can imagine any of the big people that we know of to let go that easily. I think it is to be a fight. However, I think I have no doubt that the cruise industry is not ending here, and I think, like Greg said, is the big advantage the cruise has is that their own really hardware is really based on flexibility and relocation to places, and we see it every time there is a crisis, there's a hurricane, there is like a major natural disaster, the cruise ships, you know, relocate, they go in another part of the world, and so that is this major flexibility that seems like such a given thing, right? That the ship moves. We tend to forget about this and sometimes compare this industry to the rest of the hospitality industry. But there is one thing that this industry has, which is this mobility and flexibility. And the other thing that this industry has is really an incredible resiliency that has demonstrated throughout various global crises. So we just need to adapt. I think that we're gonna see a lot of changes, and I think they're gonna be gradual. Even this return to sail is gonna be gradual, little by little. Even though, you know, all of us here, we would like to all the work to come back with a big bang. You know, maybe it's not going to happen quite like this, and the changes are going to be, you know, happening organically, and I feel very positive about that.
Okay, great. I think this was a nice, fun discussion, and we didn't have any arguments, which I was kind of hoping for. But maybe the arguments are going to come now when we have the questions. So I'm going to start with one of the questions, which has to do with the role of textiles in public spaces. And the person is asking if the role of textiles is shifting as a result of the pandemic, and if so, how? Who'd like to take that one?
No, I can say something about that. Being an interior architect, and of course, very, very, the textiles is an important part of what we're doing. I think already there were textiles that had antibacterial qualities, and of course, that's even more asked for now. So I think in general, materials will be in the focus of being able to have this quality, and we will source for that. I think when you specify, that's probably going to be a demand also, that especially maybe in cabins and even flooring, you know, could be have that same quality, or yeah. So, but again, I think also the air in will be important. How they actually solve the air quality and how to not spread virus will be very important. So it's everything together. It's not only textiles, but of course that's a major part as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, I would also like to add that a lot of the ways in which we specify for cruise ships, textiles being antimicrobial, surfaces being bleach cleanable, has actually paved the way, I would say, for the rest of the hospitality industry. They have so much to learn from us designers of cruise ships, because this is what we've been doing for years. You know, there's the norovirus, there's viruses that are on cruise ships that we have been designing for. And the reason that there have not been so many pandemics in the world on cruise ships is because of a lot of the work that we have already been used to doing in terms of cleanable surfaces. I definitely do see that carpets will probably be, hard surfaces will be replacing carpets in certain places, maybe even in cabins, which is very counterintuitive, because when we design on a ship, we are always considering the load, how heavy things are. And, you know, with hard surface, it's always weighs more and it costs more. So that's an adjustment that will have to be made. And LVT and vinyl flooring, things like that could play a big part in that as well. How does proven technology feature in your design considerations in the pandemic? Anyone got something on that, on like infrared or something like that?
I will sort of take that, because I was working with, or sort of collaborating in just discussions actually with a lighting designer, and really got a lot of knowledge from him regarding UVC light. Because, you know, the first thing when the pandemic hit, oh, UV light. Well, UVA and B don't really help. It's got to be UVC.
Yep.
And there's different types of UVC. And UVC is also something you cannot expose a person to.
Right.
So it was interesting, you know, that technology, and you know, there was discussion of products of where you could put like UVC lights that would be in a stateroom, and then after the house keeping attendants cleaned the stateroom, they could flip a switch remotely that would put on the UVC light for like 15 to 30 minutes and basically kill all bacteria, etc., in the stateroom. The problem is when you start looking at that kind of technology in a big cruise ship, we know that on a turn day, the time frame for housekeeping to turn a stateroom is 12 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So you know, the technology wasn't able to do its task within that period. So there's more than just those constraints of killing the germs. There's also operational constraints that come into play. So yes, there is technological solutions. I see UVC light could be something that's employed in the air filtration and air, you know, HVAC systems. So as air is recirculated through those systems, it's actually, the microbes are killed at that point. You know, so it's really determining where the technology that is available is best suited to get the maximum use out of it than it is just throwing technology at the wall, hoping that it will stick, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another question, which I think is a very valid one, is everybody knows on embarkation day or disembarkation day, vertical circulation, there's always bottlenecks, right? So this questioner wanted to know how that is going to be tackled, you know, the dispersion of vertical circulation, or what will there be done to have social distancing at the same time dealing with the sheer capacity of people disembarking and using those vertical circulation cores so heavily on embarkation and disembarkation days, or like theater night or something like that.
I'll take that for a second. And this is kind of coming back to what I was saying before, is about the clients asking us for, you know, design solution. What needs to be solved really are operational solutions. And and this is like the perfect example of what, you know, the cruise ship company are thinking about this today. It is where, again, I would love to be super helpful to my clients, but this is really not my thing. You know, they need to think about it. And this is like, it really, the cruise experience starts in the moment that the guests get out of the taxi or get out of the car, and they park their car and they arrive at the terminal. And that is, it is something that I don't know that we can really give an answer right now, but I know for a fact that they are thinking really hard about this type of sequence of events, and not just the vertical circulations, but really the checking in and how technology is actually helping on another type of another just the vertical circulation. So it's not like how the people circulate on board as well. How do we approach this flow of people going through the same elevators? Are we going to have face recognition, or you know, all these things? Technology can really help a lot. Royal just launched something called Master 2.0, which is basically it makes possible for guests to do the mastering, which is mandatory before started sailing, not really in this traditionally congregation of people in certain master station, but really digitally from their smartphone, and then at their own time go and check with whoever is in charge of this to make sure that they've actually done it. I mean, that's to me, it's like it's already an incredible progress, you know. Right. In general.
So last question, this audience member says, I am fearful that some cruise companies may have committed to design changes early that deliver no discernible benefit to health and safety. Is my fear unfounded? And to what extent have you been able to guide your clients and promote a more cautious approach?
I think the fears are unfounded, you know, to be quite honest. And it goes to what Francesca has just said. There is a lot of study on the cruise line, right? Cruise lines now, you know, the Healthy Sail that Norwegian and Royal Caribbean Group are doing together is just one of many programs of different cruise lines of what's being studied and done. And I know from my discussions with our clients, they're not going to put a ship back on the water until the safety of every guest has been thoroughly thought through, and the safety of their crew as well. So they're, unlike what we're seeing in airlines, you know, and it's really relevant to me since I just got off a plane a few hours ago, where the airlines are going to fly the planes full, and there is no social distancing, and you know, you're at the mercy of how good your face covering is as your only barrier of protection. The cruise lines are not going to go that route. They are going to make sure that their guests and their crew are safe.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and I know there was a lot of bad press regarding the Grand Princess, but, you know, it really was just one of those things that the whole world got caught by surprise by this pandemic and how serious this virus was and how enclosed environments help contribute to the spread. And it was just the consequence of the pandemic. It was of no fault of anything that Princess did. It was just an unfortunate set of circumstance that happened. And I think that the cruise industry, their primary goal is the safety of their guests and crew, and always has been and always will be.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you again so much, everybody, for joining, and thank you to my panelists. You guys have been amazing, and I do hope everyone will be back for episode 2, where we will be talking to, like I said, the operators of various cruise owners. So thank you very much.